Welcome back to the English Nook. I'm Maya.
And I'm Ethan. Today, we are initiating a highly specialized deep dive for our C2 Mastery cohort, one that occupies the intersection of elite corporate strategy and deep behavioral psychology.
We are dissecting a phenomenon known in high-stakes environments as corporate camouflage, specifically exploring the unwritten behavioral codes of executive presence.
It's a fascinating paradigm, Maya. When you observe the upper echelons of any major corporate entity, you quickly realize that leadership is rarely weaponized through volume or hyperactivity. True power within an organizational hierarchy is almost entirely silent.
Precisely. It is an exercise in restraint. The most formidable figures in a boardroom do not scramble to fill the silence. They possess what executive coaches call an innate gravitas, a profound weightiness of character and demeanor that commands immediate, unquestioned authority the moment they enter a room.
Yet, for many advancing professionals, the default reaction to high-pressure environments is the exact opposite. When a crisis manifests, or when their authority is challenged, their immediate psychological defense mechanism is to over-explain, to over-justify, and essentially to over-communicate.
And linguistically, that is where the vulnerability lies. Over-explaining is an explicit admission of insecurity. It signals to the room that you are seeking validation. High-status leadership, however, relies on an advanced state of stoicism, the ability to remain entirely unbothered by external chaos, maintaining absolute control over your internal emotional state.
For our C2 scholars, this masterclass serves a dual purpose. We are not merely analyzing these unspoken executive dynamics. We are expanding your linguistic portfolio with vocabulary designed to project absolute precision. We will be integrating abstract terms like taciturn, imperious, and low-reactivity throughout our dialogue.
And, as is our custom, we shall culminate today's exploration with the word to, isolating 5 prestigious terms from our discussion, analyzing their etymology, and illustrating their execution in professional syntax.
If you wish to transcend conversational English and master the subtle linguistic arts of professional navigation, do take a brief moment to secure your subscription to our channel.
Now, Ethan, let us isolate the foundational pillar of this executive aura, the concept of low reactivity. Why is a lack of immediate response viewed as the ultimate power move in a corporate crisis?
It comes down to a fundamental misinterpretation of speed versus competence. Let's dissect exactly how the corporate elite utilize deliberate delay to assert dominance. To truly understand low reactivity, one must look at how the brain processes panic. In a corporate crisis, whether it's a catastrophic data breach or a sudden market downturn, the instinct of the uninitiated is to react instantly. They send frantic, multi-paragraph emails. They call emergency meetings. They speak at a rapid, breathless tempo.
And in doing so, they inadvertently broadcast their panic to the entire organizational hierarchy. They believe they are demonstrating urgency, but the board perceives it as a total lack of emotional control. A true executive, by contrast, defaults to an almost clinical detachment.
Exactly. When hit with bad news, they pause. They allow a deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable silence to hang in the air. This tactical delay accomplishes 2 things. First, it prevents an emotional reaction. Second, it forces everyone else in the room to calm down to meet their level of composure. It is a masterful display of stoicism.
It alters the physics of the boardroom. The person who reacts the least controls the room. Now let's contrast this with the fatal flaw of the middle manager, the compulsion to over-explain.
This is a profound linguistic trap. Suppose an executive asks a simple, direct question, such as, "Why was the project deadline missed?" A vulnerable professional will often launch into an elaborate defensive narrative. They detail the vendor delays, the internal team sickness, the technical glitches. They provide a mountain of justification.
And what the executive hears is not an explanation, but a confession of incompetence. By over-explaining, you are practically begging the room to validate your excuses. You are handing over your power. A high-status leader addresses a failure with extreme linguistic economy. They state the core issue in one sentence, outline the correction in a second sentence, and then stop speaking.
That absolute cessation of speech requires immense psychological courage. It creates a vacuum. Less confident individuals feel an overwhelming urge to fill that vacuum with nervous chatter, which continually erodes their authority.
This brings us to a rather controversial tool in the executive toolkit: being intentionally taciturn. To be taciturn means to be habitually reserved and uncommunicative in speech. In a corporate culture that constantly rewards loudest voice in the room behavior, being the person who speaks the least, but with the most precision, creates an aura of mystique and power.
It makes your words highly valuable. When a taciturn leader finally chooses to weigh in on a debate, the entire room falls completely silent because they know the intervention will be surgical. It is the ultimate manifestation of gravitas.
However, executing this level of restraint without appearing cold, distant, or actively hostile is a delicate art. There is a fine line between a powerful, low-reactivity presence and looking like a detached machine.
Indeed, there is a distinct social penalty if this camouflage is mismanaged. Let us transition into our Real Talk segment to analyze the hidden risks of projecting absolute authority in an evolving workplace.
Let us pull back the curtain on this executive aesthetic, Ethan. While maintaining a low reactivity posture is undeniably a power move, it is accompanied by a severe psychological tax. If you over-index on corporate camouflage, you run the risk of alienating your workforce entirely.
Absolutely. There is a treacherous line between projecting profound gravitas and appearing completely robotic or pathologically detached. When a leader is consistently taciturn, the team cannot read their emotional baseline.
And in the absence of data, the human mind defaults to fear. If a manager walks through the office with an unreadable stoic expression, the employees do not think, "Ah, look at that magnificent display of executive presence." They think, "Am I about to get fired? Is the company collapsing?"
It triggers an epidemic of collective paranoia. Your silence becomes a canvas onto which others project their deepest professional anxieties. Furthermore, if your composure is entirely unyielding, you can inadvertently project an imperious aura, an attitude that is arrogant, overbearing, and completely closed off to feedback.
This is the paradox of modern leadership. The old school corporate playbook demanded an almost militaristic, unmoving facade. But today's organizational structures value psychological safety. If your team feels that your stoicism makes you unapproachable, they will begin to hide their mistakes from you to avoid your cold judgment.
Which is, ironically, the ultimate failure of executive control. You become insulated from the ground reality of your own business. So, how does an ambitious professional deploy this corporate camouflage effectively without destroying human connection?
The secret lies in selective vulnerability. High-status presence is not about suppressing your humanity. It is about managing its distribution. It means being low reactive during an external crisis, but highly accessible during a one-on-one team alignment.
It is tactical adaptability. You wear the armor when the boardroom demands dominance, but you remove the helmet when your team requires empathy. It requires an advanced level of emotional intelligence to know precisely which version of yourself to deploy.
Exactly. True corporate camouflage is not a permanent mask. It is a fluid strategy. Now that we have exposed the internal friction of this dynamic, let us pivot to the concrete takeaways. How do you practice this high-level restraint in your daily professional interactions?
It requires a fundamental restructuring of your conversational architecture. Let's lay out the precise blueprints for execution in our next segment.
Let us ground this analysis in actionable execution, Ethan. We have established that executive presence is an exercise in strategic restraint. But how does an aspiring leader implement this corporate camouflage during a high-stakes meeting tomorrow morning?
It begins with the absolute mastery of your vocal pacing. The simplest, most effective mechanism you can deploy is the 3-second rule. When a colleague or a superior asks you a complex or confrontational question, do not respond immediately.
That immediate response is an involuntary reflex driven by anxiety. By implementing a deliberate 3-second pause before you speak, you disrupt the momentum of the room. You signal to the entire organizational hierarchy that you are completely unbothered by the pressure of the query. You are giving your brain the tactical space to craft a concise response.
And during that pause, your physical demeanor must reflect absolute stoicism. Avoid nervous tics, do not adjust your posture, do not fidget with your pen, and maintain steady, unblinking eye contact. Your physical stillness amplifies your linguistic weight.
Now, let's address how to handle a direct corporate crisis. When a project collapses or a major client is lost, a low-reactivity leader utilizes a linguistic framework I call acknowledge and pause.
Break that down for us, Maya. How does that sound in practice?
Instead of launching into an emotional defense, you calmly state the reality. You say, the data migration failed this morning. I am currently auditing the root cause with the engineering team. I will provide a definitive resolution path by 3 o'clock. And then you stop speaking.
It is brilliant in its brevity. Notice what is missing from that statement. There are no apologies, no frantic explanations, and no emotional modifiers. You are not behaving like a defensive employee. You are commanding the narrative like a seasoned executive. You project an aura of complete competence, even in the midst of a disaster.
You are refusing to pathologize the failure. You treat the crisis as a normal, logical variable that you are fully equipped to resolve. That is how you project gravitas when the environment around you is fracturing.
It is the ultimate reclamation of your professional autonomy. By choosing linguistic economy over verbal clutter, you ensure that your voice remains a premium commodity within your company.
An incredibly potent blueprint for professional advancement. Now, as we prepare to close today's session, let us enter our final destination, the word tour, to anchor these sophisticated terms in your active linguistic memory.
Let's lock in the syntax of the corporate elite.
We have reached our final destination for today's session, the word tour. Today, we dissected the unspoken behavioral architecture of elite spaces. Let us review 5 sophisticated terms from our analysis to elevate your active professional lexicon.
These words carry substantial weight in high-stakes professional environments. Let us analyze their execution in advanced syntax.
Term number 1 is the noun. Organizational hierarchy. Organizational hierarchy.
This refers to the systemic structure of an organization, defining the precise lines of authority, roles, and power from the entry level to the executive board.
For example, navigating an intricate organizational hierarchy requires a keen understanding of implicit corporate codes.
Term number 2 is the noun, gravitas.
Gravitas is a quality of substance, dignity, and seriousness that commands immediate, uncoerced respect and authority from others.
For example, the incoming CEO possessed a natural gravitas that instantly stabilized the boardroom during the fiscal crisis.
Term number 3 is the noun, stoicism.
Stoicism is the intellectual capability to endure adversity, stress, or chaos with complete emotional control, without displaying grievance or panic.
For example, in high-stakes restructuring negotiations, a leader's stoicism is their most formidable psychological asset.
Term number 4 is the adjective, taciturn.
Describing an individual who is habitually reserved, concise, and uncommunicative in speech, choosing to speak only when their intervention is impactful.
For example, he was famously taciturn, yet his rare verbal contributions carried immense tactical weight within the firm.
And finally, term number 5 is the adjective, imperious.
Describing an attitude or presence that is arrogant, domineering, and overbearing, often assuming absolute authority without a hint of empathy.
For example, if mismanaged, a low-reactivity posture can devolve into an imperious aura that alienates frontline employees.
A truly formidable linguistic portfolio. Now, as is our custom within the Nook Mastery cohort, we invite you to participate in our executive roundtable below.
We want to hear your perspective on this dynamic. Have you ever encountered a leader who utilized a taciturn or stoic posture effectively? Or conversely, have you witnessed over-explaining erode someone's authority in a critical professional setting?
Formulate your analysis in the commentary section. We challenge you to syntactically integrate at least one of today's advanced terms, such as gravitas, stoicism, or organizational hierarchy, into your contribution. Maya and I will be reviewing your insights and engaging with your analyses directly.
If this masterclass has sharpened your linguistic precision and enhanced your professional perspective, do express your support by engaging with the like mechanism below. Your deliberate engagement allows the Nook to expand its reach to ambitious global professionals.
Thank you for investing your cognitive focus and your time with us today.
Practice strategic restraint. Command your linguistic environment. And we shall look forward to your presence in our next mastery installment.
Maintain your composure, everyone. Goodbye for now.